Before I tell you how my sister took my ring and how it burned her skin the moment she wore it, please subscribe because the stories we're most ashamed to say out loud are usually the ones that finally set us free. I grew up in a small coastal town where the salt stuck to window panes and the houses learned to lean into the wind. In summer, the air tasted like lemon and seaweed. In winter, the gulls screamed like warnings we never heeded. Our home sat on the hill above the harbor, a squat white cottage with blue shutters and a porch that groaned like a tired truth teller. My sister Clara lived in the room at the back, where the morning light arrived late and soft. I lived at the front, where storms hit first. We were born 19 months apart and spent our childhood in a kind of permanent entanglement, my hand leading, hers tugging, both of us always looking back to see whether the other one followed. People said we were inseparable. People always say that about sisters, as if proximity were the same thing as peace. The ring arrived before. I could remember wanting it, and long before Clara could bear that I had it. Our grandmother, everyone called her Lala, because when we were little, we could not. Shaped the word Nana, yet wore it every day of her life that mattered and never on days that didn't. A simple gold band with a thin oval glass that looked like a stone when the light turned serious. It shouldn't have been beautiful, but it was. There was a hairline fracture, a pale thread of lightning across the glass, and Lala would trace it with her thumb when she was thinking. Truth rarely keeps its surface, she'd say, but it holds. She told us the ring had lived longer than she had and would outlive us both. It wasn't magic, she said, and yet sometimes it was. This ring goes to the one who carries love without envy, she warned gently, her voice like chamomile. Not to the oldest or the youngest, not to the best behaved. To the one who keeps love clean. I didn't know what that meant when I was 9. By the time I was 26, I understood it too well. We were a house of 3 women and one drifting weather system. My mother had the tired hands of someone who'd been disappointed enough times to make it a habit. She believed in work, in the ritual of tidying, in the resignation that passes for strength when there are no more surprises to be had. My father left when I was 14 and never returned, as if he'd been a careless sentence the story decided to delete. Lala was the weather system, bright and sudden, merciful and exact. Clara was the favorite everyone denied was the favorite. She was good at making rooms watch her. She had laughter that made people volunteer their attention, eyes that gathered kindness like shells. I loved her for it, and I feared her for it, and I wished I didn't feel either. Lala died in late autumn when the bay turned slate and the days got impatient. The day before her heart forgot its rhythm for good, she took my hand and pushed the ring into my palm. Elena, she said, using the name she saved for serious moments. This belongs where it cannot be worn to win. Then she closed my fingers around it, and the weight felt like a small promise that had decided it would no longer be small. Clara stood at the foot of the bed, biting her lip, the way she did when she wanted something she wasn't sure she should want. I slipped the ring onto my finger, and it found its place. Like the glass had been molded from a piece of me I hadn't known was missing. At the funeral. The sky broke open and rained so hard the ground swelled and spit it back. People came with lemon bars and condolences, with stories that made Lala sound like a saint, which she would have hated. After everyone left, the house smelled like Lizzie and wet wool. My mother sat in Lala's chair and folded her hands like someone rehearsing stillness. I washed the dishes that didn't need washing. Clara stood at the sink, pretending to dry. It isn't fair, she said, too lightly. You were always with her. You didn't even like wearing jewelry. It isn't about jewelry, I said, soft because grief makes you reasonable. She chose. She chose you because you were here, she said, because you didn't leave. You could have stayed, I said, and regretted it the instant it left my mouth. She had left for the city, for a half scholarship and a half promise, for a version of herself that didn't have to ask permission from the wind. I had stayed because leaving felt like walking into a story I didn't recognize, and because someone had to drive Lala to her doctor when the bus decided the hill wasn't worth the trouble. Clara put the towel down and turned toward me, face set in that fixed smile people wear when they're trying not to cry. "It doesn't matter," she said. "It's just a ring." She didn't look at my hand when she said it. I didn't look at hers either, which was shaking. We slept badly that night, the rain hissing like an argument no one wanted to continue. In the morning, the house leaned into its new silence, and I woke to the odd sensation that something had been rearranged in my sleep. I went to make coffee and found Clara awake at the table, eyes swollen, hair in an apology of a bun. The ring was on her hand. I stared at it, then at her. She didn't flinch. "I took it," she said. "I wanted to see how it felt." "It feels like mine," I said. Before I could catch the pettiness of it, she lifted her chin. "Lala loved us both." "She did," I said. "And she gave it to me." "Maybe she thought you'd share," she replied, and then she slid her finger against the ring as if to spin it and win. She didn't win. The ring wouldn't move. I watched her tug, gently at first, and then with a panic that made the air thin. "It's stuck," she said, trying to laugh. My hands must be swollen." "Soap," I said, and I brought the dish from the sink and we tried, both of us too aware of how far back this argument really went. The ring did not budge. She turned on the cold tap, teeth clenched, made the fingers smaller and the ring the same. When she finally yanked hard, she gasped, and the sound reached into my chest and squeezed. "It burns," she said, pulling her hand back like she'd touched a stove. On her skin, under the band, a thin red line had already appeared, the kind of mark a lie would make if it could draw blood. "You're allergic," I said. "It's old metal." "It happens. We'll get oil, relax." She washed her hand and sat back down, quiet in a way that made me want to stand between her and whatever had decided to notice us. "I didn't mean to steal it," she said, voice small. "I just wanted to know what it felt like to be the one who gets chosen first." I should have said I understood. I should have pressed my thumb into the place the ring had burned and apologized for every moment I hadn't noticed her need. Instead, I said, "Take it off." And the moment closed like a door we would spend a year trying to reopen. We tried olive oil and string, ice and tricks, the internet and our mother's suggestions from the doorway that sounded like spells because she needed them to be. Nothing worked. The ring sat on Clara's finger like a decision that had made itself. The red line darkened as the day did. My mother finally said, "The clinic in town is open until 6. They'll cut it." But Clara shook her head, stubbornness and shame doing their old duet. "It'll come off when I'm not thinking about it," she said, and she poured herself coffee she wouldn't drink. The hours stretched and then snapped like rubber bands. The house creaked with the weight of everything not said. Our mother went upstairs to lie down, grief-dressed, exhausted. I sat on the porch steps looking at the water, at the boats that were late or early, at the gulls that never learned to leave. Behind me, I heard Clara moving doors opened and closed. Drawers slid and shut, the soft curse of someone trying not to be the problem. When she came outside, she held herself in the way people hold themselves when they're pretending to be fine. "It's silly," she said. "It's a ring. I'll sleep, I'll wake, it will be off, and you can have it. Or we can trade it like a relic every Christmas. Or we can throw it in the bay and call it a metaphor. I wanted a day." The last sentence broke itself. I made space for her on the step. She didn't sit dot. We ate little, spoke less. At dusk the sky turned violet and then bruised, and I remembered Lala's voice, the one who carries love without envy. I remembered how, when we were small, Clara would hide my favorite marble under her pillow for a week and then return it like a ceremony, and how I'd act gracious when what I wanted was to roar. I remembered that keeping love clean is the hardest work I have ever learned to do. The first dream came that night. I was in Lala's room, which was wrong because it had already been dismantled. The scarves folded and given away, the bed stripped, the perfume bottle emptied. In the dream, everything was as it had been, but the light was different green and underwater, as if the house had slid into the bay and decided not to tell us. Lala sat at the vanity, her back to me, brushing her hair with the slow tenderness of someone convincing herself she still belonged to her body. The ring lay on the table beside the brush. I reached for it. She caught my wrist in the mirror. Her hand was ice. "It chooses," she said, "and if you take what chooses against you, it will mark the part of you that lied." I woke with my palm on my chest, the place that hurt when I tried not to cry. In the morning, Claire's finger was worse. The skin under the band had a thin blistered halo, a pale ring of tenderness that looked like a warning pressed into flesh. She hid it under her sleeve, and when I looked, she glared like I had caused it. "Stop staring," she said, and then quieter. "I'm scared." I made tea and pressed a cold spoon to the swelling and said it would be fine because lies can be kindness. When they're the only thing keeping someone steady, we took her to the clinic after all. The doctor, who had hands like the inside of a shell pink, sure, a little too soft-tried all the ordinary things. Finally, with clippers and patience, he cut the ring. It gave with a sigh I felt in my bones. He widened it carefully and slid it off. The line it left was clean and ugly and honest. Clara cried not the theatrical sob of someone trying to win a verdict, but the quiet, breathless cry of someone who wished time had a rewind button you could press with a thumb. The doctor told her the wound would heal and that the scar might stay, and that she should avoid old metal, and that sometimes our bodies tell the truth when we don't know how. Back home, the cut ring lay on a white saucer on the mantel, open like a question. I put it in my palm, and it was warm. I wrapped it in tissue and set it in Lala's jewelry box, next to the brooch she'd worn to my mother's wedding and the earrings she'd promised to Clara and never got the chance to hand over. That night, I dreamt again. This time, Lala took my face in both of her hands. Her fingers were warm and smelled like orange peel. "Don't let the house keep your secrets," she said. "Houses like this grow mounds." When I woke, the window was open, though I was sure I had closed it, and the curtain was breathing in and out like a living thing. The days that followed were a lesson in how quickly small wounds can alter a world. Clara wore a Band-Aid and a new bitterness. She said it was nothing and acted like it was everything. She joked about curses when people stopped by with condolences, and though they laughed, they did not touch her hand. Our mother moved through the rooms like someone trying to remember a name. I took long walks on the shore and pretended I was strong. On the 5th day, I opened the jewelry box to look at the ring, as if looking could stitch something closed. The tissue was damp. The tiny cut edges of the band had darkened, as if they had burned and burned again. I told myself it was moisture, metal, and salt air doing what they do. I told myself stories about corrosion and physics and the way the world insists on returning to its simpler elements when we're not watching. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Clara's hand, and I saw the mark it had made, and I heard Lala, the one who carries love without envy. I thought of the way envy moves, quiet and justified, like a shadow we call shade, clean only because we refuse to touch its edges. I went downstairs and found Clara sitting at the table, watching the rain return, her good hand curled around a mug she had forgotten to drink. She looked up at me as if I might forgive her for a crime she was still perfecting. "It's just a ring," she said, and then she whispered the truth that stood between us like a lit match, but I wanted it to mean I won. That was when I knew it wasn't the metal that had burned her. It was the lie she had told herself to hold it. And a lie like that doesn't stay on the skin. It travels. It learns your walk. It practices your voice. It opens doors in your house at night and asks the wind to come inside Dot by the end of the week. The pillow on my bed smelled like the lavender Lala used to tuck in our drawers. Clara's bandage left a damp crescent on the bathroom sink. Our mother prayed out loud in the kitchen, hands clenched so tight her knuckles made a small, angry hill. The town carried on. The bay breathed. The gulls laughed. And the ring waited, open and patient, for the day it would be asked to choose again. I didn't know then that the house would demand more than the truth, that the ring would show us what it remembered, that wanting to be the one who wins is a flame you can't predict once lit. I only knew that something had entered the quiet something old, enough to be mistaken for grief and sharp enough to be called justice. And that night, when I finally slept, the window drifted open once more, and the curtain moved in and out with the tide, and in the distance, the lighthouse blinked the same warning it had blinked my whole life. Come closer if you dare, but don't pretend you weren't told. Morning light crawled across the kitchen table, like it was afraid to touch anything. The bandage on Clara's finger had already begun to stain a faint rust color where the burn met the air. She sat staring at her coffee while the steam faded into nothing. The way people stare at their own reflection after hearing something they wish they could unhear. It looks better, I said. Lying because she needed me to, she lifted the edge of the bandage. The skin beneath was angry and wet, the mark deeper than it had been the night before. Better isn't the word I'd use. I reached for the ointment tube, but she pulled her hand away. It's fine, it isn't. Don't start, Elena, she said quietly. You always start. The way she said it flat, exhausted, wasn't cruel, just old. Old the way rust is old, born from too many rains. The doctor had promised the wound would close if she kept it clean. But each day the red deepened into something that looked less like injury and more like possession. By the third morning, the skin around it had begun to dry and darken, as though the ring had burned an idea into her rather than a scar. She hid it under a glove when we went into town. People still stopped us to say how sorry they were about Lala. Small-town condolences are a kind of performance, everyone needing to prove they hadn't already forgotten. Clara smiled through it, gracious as ever. But when Mrs. Dalton reached to pat her arm, Clara flinched like she'd been struck. That night she came into my room long after I'd turned the lights off. Elena, she whispered, does it smell like smoke to you? I sat up. What smoke? She was pale, eyes too wide. In my room. I smelled it when I closed my eyes, like burned metal and Lila. I followed her down the hall. Her window was open, curtains moving like slow breath, and the air was clean except for the faintest trace of lavender, the kind Lala used to keep in her drawers. There's nothing burning, I said. She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. Neither did I Dot over the next few weeks. She changed in ways I couldn't explain to anyone without sounding superstitious. She started waking earlier than me, sitting in the parlor with the lights off, staring at the empty mantel where the ring used to rest. Sometimes I'd hear her murmuring, the way a person prays when they don't know if anyone's listening. Daughter mother noticed too. She's grieving, she said, folding laundry with the grim rhythm of habit. I think it's more than that. I told her. She'd be fine, my mother said. Girls fight, then they forgive. You did your part. Let it go. But letting go felt like betrayal. One evening, while clearing out Lala's room to finally donate her clothes, I found a small wooden box wedged behind the dresser. Inside were folded letters tied with ribbon the color of dried blood. The handwriting was Lala's, slanted and deliberate. I read the first one before I could stop myself. To anyone who finds this after I'm gone, keep the ring away from envy. It doesn't punish, it remembers. It knows the warmth of truth and the heat of lies. It was never meant to adorn. It was meant to remind. I sat on the floor for a long time, the words sitting heavier in my chest than grief. The second letter was older, dated decades ago, addressed to a man named Tomas. You said love and truth were the same thing, and I believed you until the night you lied. When you died, the ring was still warm. I think it wanted to follow you, but it stayed. Perhaps it will always stay with whoever needs reminding. I folded the letters back and locked the box, my hands shaking. Lala's gentle warnings suddenly felt less poetic and more like instructions for survival. That night, I found Clara at the kitchen sink, holding her burned hand under cold water. The skin had cracked, thin threads of blood like ink running down her wrist. "Clara," I said, grabbing a towel. "You need to see a doctor again." She jerked away. "It doesn't matter what they do. It won't heal." "It will," I said. "It won't," she whispered, and her voice broke. "I dream about her hand on mine, Elena, every night. She looks at me like I took something I can't return." I froze. "She's dead," I said softly. Clara nodded. "Then why does it still feel like she's waiting for me to give it back?" The towel fell from my hand. The wind rattled the kitchen window as if to confirm it. The next morning, our mother found the wooden box on the table where I must have left it after reading. She turned the key over in her fingers. "What's this?" "Lala's letters," I said. "You should read them." She set it down without opening it. "Your grandmother had a talent for drama. Don't let her ghosts write your days." But that afternoon, I saw her reading them in the garden, lips pressed thin, eyes shining like mirrors turned inward. That night, she lit a candle on the mantel for the first time since the funeral. She didn't say why. By the end of that month, Clara's mark had faded from red to white, but never disappeared. A thin scar ringed her finger like a story she couldn't stop telling. She started wearing a new ring, a plain silver band she bought at the market. When I teased her, she said, "Maybe I'm daring it to forgive me." But forgiveness isn't something you dare. It's something that waits for you to be honest. Sometimes I'd catch her staring at the sea from the porch, her hand lifted against the light, turning the scar toward the sun as if checking whether it still remembered the burn dot. And in the evenings, when the tide came in and the house filled with that slow, whispering hush, I could almost hear Lala's voice in it. Not angry, just watchful. Then came the day the mirror cracked. Literally. Clara was brushing her hair in Lala's old vanity when the glass split from corner to corner, a thin lightning scar across her reflection. She screamed and I came running. "What happened?" "Nothing, I didn't touch it." Her hand trembled, and when she looked down, a faint line of blood was blooming on the old scar where the ring had burned her. It started bleeding again, she said. The blood was bright and sudden, like something fresh instead of healed. I wrapped her finger again, my breath shaking. "It's coincidence," I told her. "Old wound, new cut." She stared at the mirror. "It looks like the ring." And she was right. The crack curved in the same perfect oval, thin and deliberate, as if the glass itself had decided to remember. That night, I dreamed of water. Lala stood knee-deep in the tide, her dress dark with salt, her hands outstretched. The ring floated between them, turning slowly, burning with a light that didn't hurt my eyes. When I woke, the sound of the sea was too close, too loud. I went to the window. The tide had come higher than it should have, licking the base of the hill. And in the moonlight, for a moment that might have been a trick of grief or memory, I thought I saw 2 footprints in the wet sand below the garden wall, one leading toward the water, one returning. I told myself it was nothing. I told myself we were safe, but deep down, I knew that what the ring remembered wasn't finished with us yet. Grief is a slow thief. It doesn't take everything at once. It steals a corner here, a color there, a memory until even your own reflection looks borrowed. By the time autumn settled again over our little town, the air thick with salt and the faint promise of rain, I had stopped trying to tell the difference between what was real and what the house wanted me to believe. The mirror and the vanity remained cracked, and my mother refused to have it replaced. It's part of the house now, she said. Old glass remembers too much to be thrown away. Clara had stopped talking about the ring altogether, but the silence she left in its place was heavier than confession. She wore her new silver band like a peace treaty she didn't trust, and though the wound had closed, her hand stayed cold. Sometimes I'd find her pressing her finger against the window pane, tracing invisible circles like she was testing the temperature of the world outside herself. At night, I still dreamed of Lala, always near water, always turning that ring between her fingers like she was rolling truth into shape. In one dream, she looked at me and said, "The ring never punishes. It simply gives back what it's given." I woke with her voice clinging to me, smelling of rain and something older than fear. It was a gray Thursday when I found the letters again. I had been cleaning the attic, a desperate attempt to feel useful while the house sank deeper into its strange quiet, when I found a second box. Smaller, older, its lid carved with initials I didn't recognize. TB inside were folded pages so brittle they might have dissolved if I'd breathed too hard. The first one began like a prayer written too late. "Dearest Ada, if you're reading this, I've gone to meet the sea. You said once that love and truth were twins. I think you were right, but I lied to both of them. I lied to you." The signature at the bottom, Tomes B, I read it twice before realizing what it meant. Lala's real name was Adeline Tomas, the ring. The death no one talked about. I brought the letters downstairs that evening. Clara was sitting by the fireplace, hair unbrushed, eyes distant. The wind outside had picked up, a storm brewing over the bay. "What's that?" she asked, not really caring. "Letters," I said. "From her. From before us." She frowned. "You went through her things again?" "She left them to us," I said, unfolding the first sheet. "You should hear this." I read aloud about a man who'd given her a ring as a promise in a prison, about betrayal, about death that wasn't quite an accident, about how she'd worn that guilt like jewelry for the rest of her life. When I finished, Clara was crying. Not loudly, just tears falling one after another, the way rain commits to gravity. She loved him, she whispered. And it killed her. She forgave him, I said. "That's what this means." She shook her head. "No, she punished herself. And now we're just the echo." The days after that felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by truth. You could feel it in the walls, the house settling, the air growing thick whenever someone said her name. Our mother tried to lighten things, forcing dinners, turning on the radio, pretending normalcy could drown out inheritance. But the storm kept building. Then one night, the power went out. A single strike of lightning cracked so close to the house that the windows rattled in their frames. I lit a candle and went to check on Clara. Her door was open. She wasn't inside. I found her in Lala's room, standing before the vanity, the cracked mirror gleaming in the candlelight. In her hand was the ring. My heart stopped. "Where did you get that?" "It was calling," she said, voice calm, eyes glassy. "You shouldn't—" "I dreamed about her," Clara interrupted. "She told me it wasn't done, that it still remembers the promise, that it wants to be forgiven." "Clara, listen to yourself." She said it forgave her when she told the truth. So maybe it'll forgive me too. She slipped the ring halfway down her finger before I could stop her. The air shifted. The flame of the candle bent sideways, then flared high. "Clara," her breath hitched. "It's warm," she whispered. Not burning, but within seconds, the warmth turned to heat. She gasped, dropped the ring, clutched her hand, fell to her knees. The candle toppled, wax splattering across the floorboards. I kicked it out before it could start a fire. The ring lay in front of her, glowing faintly in the half-light, humming like something alive. Her finger had blistered again, fresh, angry red. Why? She sobbed. Why me? I wrapped her hand in a wet cloth. Because you keep asking it for something it already gave. What's that? The truth, I said. After that night, the ring disappeared again. I searched everywhere, drawers, shelves, under the vanity, in the floor cracks, nothing. But the house began to change. Doors that had stayed open for years started closing on their own. The air felt heavier, charged. The mirror fogged even when the room was cold. And the smell of lavender and metal followed us like a quiet warning. Mother refused to talk about it. She started sleeping in the living room, Bible on her chest, muttering prayers she couldn't remember in the morning. And Clara began writing letters to Lala. She'd sit by the window every afternoon, pen scratching quietly for hours. When I asked what she was saying, she'd smile faintly and say, "Apologies weigh less when you write them down." I didn't argue until one night, when I came home late from the market and found her asleep at the table, head resting on her arm, candle still burning. The page beneath her hand read, "You were right." I didn't love her without envy. I never knew how the ink had smudged from her tears, and just beside the letter, half hidden under her wrist, lay the ring, unbroken, whole again, when she woke. I showed it to her. "How?" she began. "It was on the table," I said. She stared at it, shaking. "I can't touch it. You don't have to." But I could feel the pull of it. The air around it vibrated faintly, like heat above asphalt. Against every good sense I had left, I picked it up. It was cold, colder than anything should be that's been near a flame. I didn't put it on. I just held it. And for a second, I thought I heard something, not quite words, but rhythm, like breath against glass. When I told Clara, she said, "Maybe it's trying to start over. Or maybe it's done warning us," I said. She didn't answer. She only looked at the scar on her hand, pale in the candlelight, and whispered, "Then what does it remember?" I didn't know. Not yet. But that night, I dreamed again. Only this time, I wasn't watching Lala from the shore. I was standing beside her. The tide rose around our ankles, dark and cold, and she placed the ring in my palm. "This isn't a curse," she said. "It's memory. Every lie leaves heat. Every truth, frost. Decide which you can live with." When I woke, my room smelled of salt. My hand was cold, and the ring lay on my nightstand, waiting. The storm came on a night when the air itself felt uncertain. Clouds rolled low over the sea, pressing against the horizon until the whole world seemed to tilt. Inside the house, every board creaked as if remembering what it was built to hold. I didn't sleep much anymore. Neither did Clara. She wandered the halls like a ghost rehearsing its haunting, her footsteps soft and uneven, her voice whispering to the air. Sometimes I'd hear her speaking as if someone were answering. When I asked who she was talking to, she said, "You wouldn't believe me." "I've already seen enough to believe anything," I told her. She smiled at that. A tired, twisted smile that wasn't really a smile at all. "Then you'll understand soon." By the end of October, the sea turned violent. Wind screamed through the shutters and rain hit the windows like thrown gravel. The electricity flickered, humming a warning. That night, the house smelled like smoke again, faint at first, then strong enough to make me choke. I ran to the kitchen, but the stove was cold. The fireplace was out. "Clara." I called. No answer. Then I saw it, light from under Lala's bedroom door. A flickering glow that shouldn't have been there. I ran. Clara was standing in the center of the room, barefoot, hair wild, the ring glowing in her hand. She was whispering something, the same words over and over. I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. The mirror behind her pulsed faintly with each repetition, as if it were breathing with her. Clara, stop. I shouted, but she didn't even look at me, Dot. She raised the ring toward her chest. It wants to forgive me. I grabbed her arm. It doesn't want anything. It's just a piece of metal. She turned on me then, eyes glassy, tears cutting through the dirt on her face. Then why won't it let go? I looked at her hand. The ring had fused to her skin again, perfectly, as if it had never been cut. And beneath it, the flesh was turning red. Take it off. I yelled, but she just cried harder. It's burning me. Then drop it. I can't. The air in the room grew thick, the walls groaning under some invisible pressure. The candle on the vanity flared, the wax spilling like blood. Clara, please. I shouted, trying to pull her hand into the basin of water on the nightstand. But the moment the ring touched the surface, the water hissed and steamed. She screamed out, then everything happened at once. Lightning struck somewhere nearby. The power exploded. The mirror shattered, shards flying across the room like silver rain. I tackled her to the floor as the lamp fell and burst. Flames licking up the curtains. The sound was deafening, thunder, shattering, her sobs. My heartbeat slamming against the inside of my chest. When I pulled her up, she was trembling violently. The ring had gone dark, still fixed to her finger, a faint line of smoke rising from it. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered, voice shaking. I just wanted what you had. I never had anything, I said, my throat raw. We were supposed to share it. Her knees gave out, and I caught her, both of us collapsing to the floor as the fire climbed higher. I could hear the storm tearing at the roof, the rain fighting to get in. Clara, we have to move. But she didn't answer. Her head rested against my shoulder, and her breathing came in shallow gasps. I tried to drag her toward the door, but the smoke was thick and the heat unbearable. Then, through the roar, I heard a sound I'll never forget, a whisper, clear and close, though no one was near, the one who carries love without envy. The same words Lala had said years ago. I felt something warm press against my palm. I looked down. The ring had slipped free from Clara's hand and fallen into mine, cool again. Innocent Dot, she gasped, eyes wide, her burned hand shaking. It's yours, she whispered. It always was. Then she passed out. I don't remember how I got us out. The fire had spread to the hallway, and the smoke blinded me. I half carried, half dragged her through the kitchen toward the back door. The handle was hot, but I turned it anyway, the metal burning into my skin. Rain poured in as I stumbled outside, collapsing with her on the wet grass. Dot. The storm drowned the flames slowly. Neighbors arrived, shouting, helping. By the time the firefighters came, the top floor was gone. The old house, our family's heart and history, was half a skeleton of what it had been. They said we were lucky to be alive. But luck wasn't what I felt. It was something heavier, survival wrapped in guilt. Clara's burns were severe. They kept her in the hospital for weeks. She barely spoke to anyone. When she did, her voice was quiet, like someone talking from another room. I went back to the ruins as soon as the officials said it was safe. The smell of smoke and wet wood clung to everything. The walls were blackened, but the vanity, the same one that had cracked, stood untouched. Its mirror completely gone. Dot, and on the floor, among the ashes. I found the ring. Dot, unscathed. Dot, shining. Dot, I picked it up carefully. It was cold again. No burn, no glow. Just stillness, but when I turned it over, faint letters had appeared along the inner edge, ones that hadn't been there before. Truth heals. Weeks passed. Clara's hand began to heal, though the scar would stay. When she was strong enough to leave the hospital, she didn't come home. She moved into a small apartment in town, said she needed distance, quiet, peace. Mother and I began rebuilding. We used what we could salvage, patching the walls with care. But nothing erased the sound of that night, her screams, the storm, the whispered words that felt both curse and prayer. For a long time, I kept the ring locked away. I didn't wear it. I didn't dare. But sometimes at night, I'd take it out and hold it in my hand. It didn't hum anymore. It didn't change temperature. It just existed. And I realized maybe that's all it had ever wanted. Not to punish, not to forgive, just to be what it was meant to be. A reminder, a mirror. The truth doesn't burn. It only hurts when you fight it. Months later, Clara came to visit. Her hair was shorter now, her eyes softer. She looked older, not in years, but in knowing. We stood in what used to be Lala's garden. New seedlings pushed through the soil, small and stubborn. "I'm sorry," she said. I nodded. "So am I." She looked at my hand. "Do you still have it?" "Yes." "Does it still burn?" "No," I said. "Not anymore." "Maybe it finished what it came to do," she said. "Maybe it was never cursed at all." We stood there in silence, the wind moving gently through the broken fence. When she left, she hugged me, really hugged me, the way she hadn't since we were girls. And for the first time, I felt no resentment, no weight, no heat. Only peace. That night, I placed the ring on the windowsill, under the same moon that had once watched everything unravel. It gleamed faintly in the light, quiet, harmless, almost ordinary dot, but as I turned to leave, I thought I heard a faint whisper, not warning this time, but farewell. "It's done." And when the morning came, the ring was gone. In its place was a faint circle of ash, not burned, just released.